Have you ever had one of those experiences that utterly shakes the foundations of your reality? An event so horrific, so inexplicable, that it leaves you questioning everything you thought you know about the world? Well, that's exactly what happened to me at my neighborhood Starbucks. It started out as a typical morning, just like any other. I awoke, shuffled through my morning routine, and headed out the door, my mind already focused on the prospect of that first sip of piping hot coffee. As I approached the familiar storefront, I couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement. Starbucks had always been a comforting ritual, a small oasis of calm in the chaos of my day. Little did I know, that sense of comfort was about to be shattered. As I pushed open the heavy glass door and stepped inside, I was immediately struck by the peculiar atmosphere. The usual bustling energy was gone, replaced by a heavy, oppressive silence. The baristas stood motionless behind the counter, their eyes downcast and their movements sluggish. And the other patrons, well, they weren't acting like patrons at all. They sat huddled in their seats, staring blankly into space, their coffee cups untouched. Unnerved, I approached the counter, trying to catch the eye of one of the baristas. "Excuse me, is everything okay?" I asked, my voice tinged with concern. The barista slowly lifted her head, her gaze meeting mine, and in that moment, I felt a chill run down my spine. Her eyes were hollow, devoid of any spark of life. "Everything is fine," she replied, her tone flat and lifeless. Somehow, I didn't believe her. Something was deeply, terribly wrong here. But before I could press further, a sudden commotion drew my attention to the far corner of the cafe. A woman was standing there, her body rigid and her eyes wide with terror. She was muttering under her breath, her words indecipherable. As I watched, transfixed, she suddenly let out a blood-curdling scream that sent shivers down my spine. The other patrons barely reacted, their vacant expressions remaining unchanged. It was as if they were completely disconnected from the chaos unfolding before them. Panicked, I turned to the barista, desperate for some explanation. "What's happening? What's wrong with her?" The barista's eyes remained fixed on the ground. "She's seen it," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Seen what?" I pressed, my heart pounding in my chest. But the barista offered no further response, leaving me to grapple with a growing sense of unease that was rapidly consuming me. Unsure of what to do, I decided to make my way towards the woman, intent on offering some form of assistance. But as I approached, she whirled around to face me, her eyes wild and feral. "Stay back," she shrieked, her voice a guttural, primal scream. "It's not safe. You have to get out of here." I froze, my hands raised in a gesture of surrender. "Please, let me help you," I said, my tone as soothing as I could muster. But the woman shook her head vehemently, her entire body trembling. "You don't understand," she gasped. "It's already too late. We are all doomed." With that, she turned and fled, darting out of the Starbucks and disappearing into the chaos of the street beyond. I stood there, rooted to the spot, my mind racing. What on earth was happening here? What had that woman seen? And why was she so terrified? Slowly, I turned back towards the counter, my gaze locking with the barista's once more. Please, I pleaded. Tell me what's going on. The barista's lips parted, as if she were about to speak, but before she could utter a word, a sudden, thunderous crash from the back of the cafe drew our attention. We whirled around to see a massive shadowy figure emerging from the kitchen, its features obscured by swirling, inky mist. The other patrons remained motionless, their eyes downcast, as if they were completely oblivious to the creature's presence. I felt my heart leap into my throat as the thing turned towards me, its gaze boring into my very soul. In that moment, I knew with absolute certainty that I was in the presence of something deeply, profoundly wrong. A being of pure, unadulterated evil. Without a moment's hesitation, I turned and fled, bursting out of the Starbucks and into the chaos of the street beyond. I ran, my lungs burning, my legs aching, desperate to put as much distance between myself and that hellish creature as possible. What had I just witnessed? What was that thing, and why did it fill me with such overwhelming dread? And what had happened to the other patrons? Why had they seemed so utterly disconnected from the horror unfolding around them? For weeks, I avoided the place, taking a detour on my daily commute to ensure that I never had to pass by it. But the memories of that day haunted me. The images of the shadowy figure and the vacant, lifeless patrons seared into my mind. And then, one night, as I lay in bed, staring up at the ceiling, a horrifying realization struck me. What if that thing, that malevolent presence, wasn't confined to the Starbucks? What if it had somehow followed me, lurking in the shadows, waiting to strike? The thought sent me a wave of panic coursing through me, and I found myself unable to sleep, my mind racing with endless scenarios of how it might all play out. I had to know, had to be sure that I was safe. And so, I decided to return to the Starbucks, determined to confront the truth, no matter how horrifying it might be. As I approached the familiar storefront, I felt my heart hammering in my chest. The lights were off, and the place was shrouded in darkness, save for a faint glow emanating from the kitchen. I made my way towards the kitchen, my senses on high alert, and there, in the dim light, I saw it, the shadowy figure, its hulking form looming over the counter. A sense of pure terror gripped me, and I froze, my mind screaming at me to turn and run.